Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill. Got another video for you today. And in this one we're taking a look at some artifact rotation comparisons. So we're going to be comparing rotation with baseline in terms of no artifacts. Then we're going to do 80 rank artifacts, 120, 160, and 200 to show the damage comparison differences between the different ranks of artifacts. Now, this rotation I'm going to be eliminating a lot of the other sources of damage potentially. So this one I'm not going to be using any allies. I don't want to use Batman and Laughs to basically have the card proc chances. Not that the other allies will matter much for sparring target rotations, but basically no allies. My chest mod, I chose extended supercharge instead of like penetrating strikes. Not that that would matter a huge difference. The only type of buff that I have is just the regular escalating might neck. In the munitions rotation that I'm using, I'm not using a finisher at all. I'm just using the regular standard heat vision into multi-net launcher, multi-net hold for multi-net retractor, and then chain gun, and then repeat. So it's a very consistent rotation. I am doing this on single target because if I test pretty much any AoE rotation, there's going to be a massive difference in damage because of the strategy card procs on AoE. So it has to stick to a single target rotation, or it's just going to basically completely skew the results because strategist card compared from 0 to 80 and then 80 to 200 when we basically the main difference between 160 and 200 is that increase the 30% increase, and that is a giant difference in damage, especially for the number of procs you're going to get by doing any kind of rotation that has dots. So that's where I'm going to be doing single target rotation. If you aren't aware of the rotation, all of this is just heat vision, multi-net, tap range to the pull, chain gun, tap range again, and into heat vision, and then just doing that. I'm doing 10 parses at 30 seconds, which basically gets me a solid 5 minutes of DPSing, which I feel is a good sample size. And then we're taking that combat log, putting into the log analyzer, and then I'll share the results with you. So let's get into it. Okay, so it's been a while since I've done a full spreadsheet video, but nonetheless, I know that a lot of these results are going to be predictable by a lot of people, but it's still nice to see how the numbers are actually arrived at and see the breakdown. So as I said before, this is a baseline rotation. I'm just using heat vision, multi-net pull, and chain gun repeat. I'm sitting at 171,948 might, 64,912 prec. Like I said before, I don't use Royal Sidekick, don't use Supercharge, don't use the finisher, don't use penetrating strikes. So in terms of baseline damage with 0 arts, in terms of the breakdown here, we're looking at 22.6 mil. Same thing over 10 parsers, 300 seconds of DPSing, which I feel is a good sample size for this. Now we've moved to the 80 rank arts. So the only difference here is now we have the Dark Bargain. We get 20% critical and 30% critical magnitude, but our damage is reduced by 21%. We get 4 seconds on the strat card procs. And then we have the 10% increased, basically the blue heat vision that everyone sees. But that's all, just the 10% base increase on that. And that jumps us up to 25 million. In terms of the average DPS, 83k, the baseline was 75k, so you can already see, even with 80 artifacts, you're adding, almost 3 million, more than 3 million damage to the actual rotation. That's just with using 80 rank arts, which 80 rank arts are perfectly, you could probably farm maybe a couple days worth of nth metal and be able to have 3 rank 80 artifacts really easily, because the actual breakthroughs, the catalysts are all cheap. So that's certainly no reason to be running around with 0 artifacts. Even if you're leveling up, as you're leveling up, you progress to 3 rank 80 artifacts, no issues. So moving to 120, the only changes here, 21% reduction now turns to 19. We have double the time for the strategy card procs from 4 to 8 seconds. And then we have the explosion effect added to heat vision. So that's something you're going to see one tick of it here. Obviously, it would make a much greater difference on AoE because you'd hit multiple targets. But in this case, on single target, you're not. So you're just getting the 1 extra proc of damage. And that moves up to 29. 160 arts, we're looking at the 17% instead of 19 reduction. And we double the proc chance on tactical advantage. And then we have burns enemies, same thing. This is going to be the effect on the amplifier that's going to be much more greater on AoE targets, or single target that's not going to be effective. That's why the damage, if I would, like I said, mentioned at the beginning of the video, if I would have done this damage on 3 targets or 5 targets or 8 targets, the damage differences would be massive between, because you would have much greater increase in damage on Soul Amplifier and a huge increase in damage on the Strategy Card proc. So I didn't choose to do that here. So take the, so just at the end of the video when I do the summary, all those numbers would probably be like a fact, like a huge 10 times, probably 10 times to 20 times increase on if it was AoE damage. So moving to 200. Now we got the reduction by 15%, with the huge difference is tactical advantage by the 30% increase in damage on the Strategy Card procs. That's where you really notice it. And then here it installs the tactical chaining mod, which won't make a big difference. So you can see here, so baseline, obviously there's no tactical advantage, no Strategy Card procs. When we get to rank 80, we're looking at about 800k damage, just free 800k damage from strat procs. 120 had 1.6 mil, so we basically doubled the Strategy Card proc damage. 160 was 2.3 mil, and 200 was 3.6 mil. So that's the damage coming across just by tactical advantage. You're not changing the rotation, you're not doing anything. It's basically just that artifact giving that free extra damage. So taking a look at the actual summary, so as we move the artifact ranks, we're moving from 22 mil, 25, 29, 30, 34. Now there was something I did notice. I'm not entirely sure. It might be a balancing thing, but if you look at rank 80 and 120, the hits on heat vision are 514 and 562. And then rank 60, 160, and 200 have dropped down to 490, 485. Now the average damage makes sense. So baseline average damage was 13k. At 80 it was 16k, 120 18k, 160 21, and 223. So the min, max, and average makes sense. The total damage is what is a little bit skewed between 120 and 160. Because the amount of the drop hits. Now, I think that has to do with something. I mean, it could be a bug. I know someone mentioned something about heat vision to me earlier, where Soul Amplifier was being bugged, but the damage makes sense at 120 and 160. The only thing at 120 seems high. I think that might have to do with the balancing, because as you can see, the change in Soul Amplifier from 120 to 160 adds the burning damage to all the other targets around it. So that's a huge increase in damage from 120 to 160 just because of the effect. So I think that could have been just like a balancing aspect where 120 is balanced a little bit high because you're not getting that extra burning damage, where 160 and 200 you get the extra damage from the AoE burning. That'd be my assumption. The last time Soul Amplifier was adjusted was when rank 200 was fixed in terms of splitting damage. That hasn't been changed since then. So I'm assuming Batuba did that's how he balanced it, where the burning damage, it could be extra burning, obviously it's extra burning ticks, but the extra burning ticks make up for some of the damage, where 160 and 200, you're not going to have that because you're going to already have a massive increase because of the extra burning effect. At least that's my assumption. If anyone else has a different one, then feel free to offer that in the comment section. So back to the summary here, from a baseline to 80, we're looking at a 11% increase in damage just from rank 80. So all you have to do is have 3 rank 80 artifacts and you already increased your rotation damage by 11%, which is a big difference. Artifacts 180 to 120, you're looking at another 19% jump. 120 to 160, like it's a 4% jump, just with that balancing that kind of skews it a bit. And then from rank 160 to 200, we go back to normal, which was about 10.2. The first one was 10.6. So it's just that one rank difference that is a little bit weird when it adds that effect. And then from 120 to 160, you're looking at 15%. And the big one, if you use no artifacts to 200, on single target at least, is a 50% increase in damage on single target from no artifacts to 200. So it does show how powerful these artifacts are. I mean, everyone already knew that was going to be a huge damage increase, but at least now you have the numbers actually to display it. Now, I could do, if you're interested, I could do something like this on AoE just to show it. It's going to be a massive increase, like I said before, but I could show it just to show. I didn't want to like disparagingly, freak everyone out. It's probably going to be like a 70 to 80% increase in damage, I wouldn't doubt, especially on the Strategy Card procs. But I could certainly do that if you're interested in that in a video. I just thought I would make the test somewhat more practical and reasonable without kind of heavily skewing it towards artifacts like I usually do in some of my other videos, just to show like, you know, how DCs pay to win. I know I've done other examples like in that artifact video where I showed like a nature rotation differences with strategy card procs, and it's like a massive like 20 mil difference. And some people pointed out that's because I'm using a heavy dot rotation on AoEs. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, that's completely viable. Anyone doing a parting testing will know the differences between like 3 or 5 targets using strategy card versus not using strategy card proc. So that's a huge increase, especially with the heat vision as well. So, but I could certainly show it if you want. This is just a summary that I wanted to show you, just how powerful artifacts are, and not even at rank 200. So it's just how heavily dependent on artifacts this game is for damage nowadays. You're looking at, just by having 3 rank 80s, just overdoing nothing, is 11% increase, which is, you know, huge on single target itself. So I know this is nothing new, but I wanted, you also, if you want me to do more of a breakdown, like I could do individual breakdown from like heat, like Soul Amplifier from rank 80 to 200, like I could do individual artifacts. I know it's a little bit harder to test like the support ones, but any kind of damage artifact, if you're interested in seeing the individual breakdown from 80 to 200 and rather than like a rotation breakdown, let me know. I can certainly do an artifact series like that, kind of an in-depth breakdown in terms of the damage. Usually when I test and show artifacts like reviews, I usually always do that at 200 to show you what the max potential is at that artifact, rather than showing each individual level, because that would just add like, you know, half an hour to the video. But certainly let me know your comments. Take care, guys. We'll see you in the next video.